Voice Spot, we are having a look at the Marvel Legends Infinite Series Rhino. It took a couple of figures, but we've now put together our completed Build-A-Figure Rhino. The end result, though, is it's an okay figure. First things first, let's have a look at his accessory would have been the alternate head. And again, I like the mask up more so because it just kind of reminds me more of like classic Rhino. But you can have mask down too. The mask down, he's more of a calmer looking Rhino versus what we ultimately chose, went with the more crazier, zanier Rhino. Paints on the horns are quite good though. Paint really as a whole, very good too. But there's the alternate head. I suppose if you had the tools and finances available, you could build two different Rhinos, one more zanier like what we see here, and one more calmer. I will say though, I'm not crazy about the face. That was one thing, even when I saw original production photos of what the figure was ultimately going to look like, I was not crazy about the face one bit. It's a little too much for me. I guess maybe from a side profile end of it, if you had the figure kind of standing sideways, it's not so bad. But from the front, it's a little too much for my liking. And I don't know what would have made it less. The eyes, I guess, aren't so bad, but maybe the overly exaggerated mouth is what's killing it for me. By no stretch of the imagination would I say that this is one of the better Rhinos. I would even go as far as to say that Toy Biz's Rhino, way back when, was a better figure. At least overall, even face-wise, was a better figure than what we see here. It's just, I'm not crazy about it, guys. I'm just really not. The Marvel Select Rhino also was a fantastic figure. I would probably say that Rhino, the Marvel Select Rhino, which seems to be a consistent trend with a lot of the Marvel Select figures, it seems to be the definitive Rhino, at least in my opinion. This one, I find, just comes up a little bit short. It's kind of like my feelings how the Build-A-Figure Thanos kind of came about. It's not a bad figure, but I just feel like it wasn't as good as, say, what Diamond Select was producing with their Select line. I just feel like that was a better figure. This has elements that I like. Paint's pretty good. That kind of... It's not quite a gray, it's more like a brown-based gray that they use for his body. It's got some grayer washes that they put in the crevice area. The skin color, the skin texture, if you want to call it skin, the Rhino skin end of it, has a good textured look to it. But I feel like, I don't know, I feel like the cons outweigh the pros in this case. Maybe even if a head swap could have salvaged this figure, the figure also could have been a little bit taller. Case in point, we'll bring Spider-Man in, we'll bring the camera down. Rhino's a good size, but I kind of just wish he was maybe a little bit bigger, and I don't know. I think maybe the biggest problem I have is I'm not biased, but I feel like once you get the Marvel Select version of a lot of these figures, it's hard to kind of go back to a Build-A-Figure of Marvel Legends. It just... Maybe am I the only one that feels this way? I feel like it just doesn't deliver as much as what we got. Even like Marvel Select Carnage, Marvel Select Venom, Marvel Select Gambit, they have all been in essence, the definitive versions of whatever those characters were. And again, Rhino, I feel like comparing this to Marvel Select Rhino, I just don't feel like this is as good of a figure. Personally, that's just my opinion. You guys can disagree, that's fine. But yeah, there he is next to Scarlet Spider, still one of my favorite figures from this line. Just love this figure to death. In the way of Rhino's posability, he does have a ball joint head. It actually hinges, I should say. It does swivel, but it swivels based on that ball joint that's sitting in the socket. Maybe if you had the head kind of turned sideways, it's not as bad. But front on, it's just too much. A little too much for my liking. Shoulders hinge out. Somewhat obstructed because the shoulder pads kind of get in the way. Arms rotate all the way around though. Swivel point in the bicep. He has a bend in the elbow, complete with a swiveled wrist. The crunch on the torso, on mine at least, is extremely loose. I suppose what I could ultimately do is take everything off, swap the torso out with the other one that we got from Misty Knight, and maybe that one isn't going to be as loose. The swivel, also swivel point in the waist. Legs have a ball joint. He has a ball joint, or hinged knee. And finally, he has a hinged foot. And once again, there's the legs coming off. Yeah, I don't know. At the end of the day, Build-A-Figure Rhino sounds great on paper, but I feel like, I don't know, I just don't feel like it delivers as well as, and again, I don't want to be a mark for Diamond Select, but really, Diamond Select, Marvel Select figures are always seemingly to be the better figures versus a build-of. I would almost be more inclined to display, if I had the Marvel Select figures, Marvel Legends figures out, I'd be probably more inclined to display a Marvel Select Rhino next to Spider-Man. He is, of course, a lot bigger, a lot beefier in size, but I feel like he's just a better figure than ultimately what we got right here. How we could have fixed this figure, I don't know. I think really from like that down is workable. Something about the head, though, just not crazy about. So as a whole, yeah, not a bad figure. The line as a whole was solid, and really outstanding issues, outstanding released figures in this series of Marvel Legends. First things first, of course, my favorite has to be the Scarlet Spider. Easily the best figure. If you ask me, again, I have a little more bias towards Scarlet Spider, but he is probably my favorite from this line. Very closely, and I say very closely, to the Ghost Rider. Now this is a case where Marvel Legends, fantastic interpretation of Ghost Rider. The translucent flames, the translucent head all come together exceptionally well, and you get a really outstanding Ghost Rider as a result. I guess next to that, and you guys probably will say, Spot, really? Really? Why would you say that? I probably would go with Carnage, or with Venom here. Yes, I don't like the designs all that much, but I don't know. I'm kind of still a sucker when it comes to Venom. And then finally, I probably would say Misty Knight. I could really go potentially on and on. I mean, Chameleon was also a strong figure. Kraven, although he didn't have the cool facial expression, I think he was a solid figure. This line has probably some of the more bigger hits than misses. Sometimes Marvel Legends tend to be a little more on the miss side, and then you've got a couple of really good gems. But this line as a whole had outstanding figures. The only one that's kind of for me is White Tiger, and that's really just because if I don't know really too much about the character, ultimately we're just dealing with a very bland white figure. And to me, I feel it could just have been a little bit more. So there you go, guys. That is the last video that we were having a look at for the Build-A-Figure Rhino. At the end of the day, Rhino could have been better, but the trade-off, though, considering this guy technically was free, even though all of these are a more inflated price of figure, Rhino was a free figure, so I can kind of say, okay, well, you know, as a Build-A-Figure, he's cool. But all the figures as a whole, fantastic. One of my favorite current waves of Marvel Legends. Certainly stay tuned, guys. Even though Spots had now finished up the looks of the Marvel Legends, there's definitely more figures and other reviews heading your way. Thanks for watching as you always do. I'll see you next time.